Hello, viewers. Welcome to my show, the second episode, Mahbub's guest show. Today, I'm very glad that I have another very important person in my community, in Bangladeshi community in Canada, in Toronto. Uh, she is with us today, and she is none other than our very own Doly Begum, a member of Provincial Parliament, Scarborough, Southwest Ontario. Doly Begum, welcome to my show. So how are you doing? I think your microphone is off. So,
Thank you so much. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
We got this.
Yeah, finally.
Thank you so much for having me, Usmani.
Yeah, doing good. So I know you're busy. I saw that during this pandemic, you went through a lot of things, even though you supported a lot of people. So my first question is like, how you are doing during this pandemic?
Alhamdulillah. It's I think everybody, everyone in our community is facing a very difficult time right now. This is something we have never expected. We have never imagined anything like this before. So we're all going through a very difficult time right now. It's sort of taking one day at a time and making sure that you keep with the routine, because sometimes it feels like it's just long strand of hours and you forget when the day begins and when it ends. And sometimes I find myself working from early in the morning to about 10 p.m., 11 p.m. and forgetting that we have to keep up with a regular normal schedule. So it's been tough for home, family, but also I think in a community that's so vibrant, where we're doing things all the time, especially during summertime. I'm really missing the community activities, the events we would do. So there's a lot of things that would happen. So we're not really we're away from what normal would be, and I'm hoping that we can get back to a new normal. And I hope everyone's doing okay as well. I know this is a tough time for everyone.
So recently, you just passed like 2 years as an MPP. So how was your journey last 2 years?
Well, I can't believe it's been 2 years. I thank you. You were there during the campaign nonstop with all the support from the community. Just this last month, actually, we passed 2 years since the election. Yeah. And I've been thinking a lot about the campaign. I've been thinking a lot about I think everyone just coming together. There was so much energy, so much excitement, and it was incredible just seeing everyone come together. Usually we do last year we actually had a 1-year celebration, and we were able to gather as a community. We had a really nice afternoon event at the West Scarborough Neighborhood Center. We weren't able to do this year, so I'm really looking forward to getting back to being able to get together so we can celebrate our 2 years as well and see everyone in the community.
Yeah, that's great. So just 2 years you passed. So what are the memorable your days or your events in Parliament? So can you share some experience, your days?
Yes. Well, in the 2 years, I think there has been so much that we have been doing. I just this past few weeks, I've been getting a lot of reminders, about the first time I spoke in the House. Yeah. I think it was a very proud moment for our community, for me to be, in that seat. I think it was a win for the entire community. And I recall 2 years ago, the first time I stood in the legislature, in the Ontario legislature, to be able to, as a Bangladeshi Canadian, to be able to represent Scarborough Southwest and the incredible people in this riding, and stand up for them, to be their voice, which is something that I promised to be. That was the core promise of our campaign, which was to be their voice. And throughout the past 2 years, I've had quite the journey to be able to get a critic portfolio, or the shadow ministry, as you would call it, for childcare and early learning, which is a very important portfolio that I have been holding on for the past 2 years. So I've been working really closely with our education sector for our children, making sure that we have a good system for childcare so that the working families, working parents can go back to work, especially something that's very important right now. I've also been very honored to be the deputy whip of our caucus of the official opposition, which has been a very rewarding position. I think it's been incredible to hold that position and to learn a lot and take on that role. And I think the other part is to be able to get to know so many community members. During the last year and a half, I was able to knock on more doors, get to meet a lot of people during events. And obviously during the pandemic, we had to change a little bit. So we've been doing a lot of phone calls where I talk on the phone with constituents, and you get to find out all the things they're going through, all the struggles, all the cases that comes to our office, and how we can help them. And sometimes there's a lot of issues that people are facing, and it means that you have a lot of long days where you feel you need to do more, but there's a lot of small wins that makes us very happy, whether it's with long-term care, the work that we've been doing, or for our hospitals. During COVID, we've been doing a lot of work supporting the local community as well, that I'll get into later on. So there's been a lot of work that we've been doing, but it's been quite rewarding taking on that position.
Yeah, I
got some up there, right?
Yeah, I saw that you worked there in Greater Edmonton, so yeah, I'm just sharing that with our audience. So yeah, a lot of things you're doing, as I said at the very beginning, and yeah, I should mention this as your current parliamentary roles. You're the critic for early learning and childcare, and at the same time, you are the deputy opposition whip. So it's a very big role, as far as I understand. So my question is, like, as the opposition whip, deputy opposition whip, what are the activities you have to do, which is extra or beyond your position as an MPP?
Yeah, so it means the day starts a lot earlier than everyone else. It means that we have this called the house team. So the house team meets very early on, every single day when the house is sitting, and the first thing we do is make sure that we go through the entire day of what bills will be debated in the House. We talk about what motions are coming forward in the House, and as the whip, I'm in charge of making sure that we have who's actually speaking in the House, as well as who will be in the House at that time, what's going on from the day-to-day in the runnings of the legislature from our opposition side, and I also get to sit in a lot of the planning process in terms of with our House leader, as well as the leaders team, and our senior staff members, to make sure that we are focused. What are we focusing on today? What are we really fighting for the people of this province? So there's quite a few things that we make sure that we start from very early on at 8:30 in the morning and focus on how the day will run. And then obviously, as I sit in the House, I'm actually watching over who's doing what in the House as well. And if I need to communicate with the Speaker of the House, then that's something else. So for example, if there is a vote, it's happening, let's say you have to defer it, then you're making sure that you communicate with the clerks as well as the Speaker of the House to make sure that the timing works out, and people who are voting at that time need to be there as well.
Yeah, I found that you're very vocal in the Parliament, especially when you raise.
I try to be.
Yeah, so that's the great thing, and I was really glad when I saw that you mentioned about our country, Bangladesh. You are representing as not only the Scarborough Southwest people, as well as from the Bangladeshi community. You mentioned several times. This is really, it's a great pleasure as a Bangladeshi Canadian. So, and even though you mentioned about our International Mother Language Day, I saw that your speech and everything. So, what are your current activities in Parliament, as well as in your social work for the Scarborough Southwest?
Mm-hmm. So I think in Scarborough Southwest, I always say that you can find a mini Canada or mini Ontario within Scarborough Southwest, because we have the, obviously, as you mentioned, we have our Bangladeshi community, but we also have a very vibrant, Tamil community as well as Filipino community, very strong Francophone, Indigenous. We actually have one of the highest amount of Indigenous people living in the city in Scarborough Southwest. We have a big Black community, a lot of people who came from, different other provinces who have moved here now live in this riding. So it's really really quite the job to make sure that you're talking to the different communities and the work that they're doing. So I was very proud to talk about the Independence Day in the legislature, make sure that we're celebrating Bangladesh Heritage Month, for example, but we're also representing the other communities that are very vibrant in our riding. So for example, just last month we celebrated Filipino Heritage Month, and just in a few days, next week, you'll see that I'm going to have a live event through our social media to talk with some of the members from the Filipino community and the work that they're doing to contribute, especially during the COVID-19 crisis in our healthcare sector. And then obviously we have making sure that we're commemorating the Tamil genocide. So just a lot of these other things that are happening in our riding and the people who are affected by that. And along with those issues, as well as the celebrations, there are a few things that I'm working really closely on. And that you'll find, obviously, if you see my social media and the work that I've been doing, long-term care has been a huge issue. So we have been working really hard to make sure that our seniors, our elders, our grandparents and parents who live, who are living in these homes, get the quality care that they need. And that's been something that's so essential. So for us, it's been making sure that the workers have the right PPE, making sure that each of the homes are supported well, but also making sure that how are they being taken care of? What kind of problems are we seeing in these homes, and what's wrong with it? Because this is something that's not new. We knew that there was a lot of problems in long-term care even before. So I have actually raised this more than a year ago with the minister. I have spoken with the minister directly about some of the concerns that I've heard from our constituents in the past. I've visited homes before COVID-19 started, when elders came to me, when seniors came to me and said, we have a big problem. The wait time, if I fall down in my room, it takes about 15 minutes for someone to come and help me. So that's just one. Childcare, as I mentioned, is a big one. Actually, I just today I released a list of actions that the government needs to take for childcare. Our healthcare system in general, before COVID-19, we knew that it was already going through a very difficult time in terms of the capacity of our healthcare system. And this is something that I have advocated for even before I joined politics. So I had to make sure that, I think one of the reasons I joined politics was because I was very passionate about the amount of resources, whether it's financial, infrastructure, just to provide quality care in our province. And we still have a long way to go. We have had years of neglect in our hospitals. The wait time is very long. They're over capacity all the time. And we knew that when COVID-19 started, a lot of doctors, a doctor from Michael Garron Hospital, who had sent all of us members of provincial parliament an email saying, we're not prepared. We need to do a lot more, which was very scary. There is a lot of things we're doing in terms of small businesses. So you'll see that I've been going and meeting local businesses throughout the riding, actually, because they need a lot of support. So right at the get-go, when things closed, we knew that a lot of small businesses were going to be struggling to open their doors again. Exactly. So one of my biggest asks was to the Minister of small businesses and red tape reduction, and our finance minister, is how are we going to help local businesses get back up? How are we going to make sure that they're able to reopen their doors? And that means providing support with their rent, making sure that they're able to pay their utilities, pay their wages for their employees. And thankfully, we were able to get the governments to actually come together and provide some support. So we had the wage subsidy provided, and then we had the commercial rent provided, the CECRA, which helped some businesses. And there has been some flaws. So you might have seen us kind of coming back and saying, here, it's a good thing that you're doing this.
Exactly.
Here is what we need to fix. So I've mentioned a few things, but there is a lot more work that we're doing in terms of tenants and support for them as well, and then small landlords who are struggling as well because they didn't get any support. I'm sure you know that a lot of, especially with the profession that you have taken on, that a lot of small landlords still have mortgages and there was no support for them. So deferral doesn't mean that they're forgiven. It means that just later on they'll have to pay more.
It's not like 6 months. Sometimes I found that some people got like 3 months deferral.
Mm-hmm.
And what is going to happen after 3 months? They have to pay the mortgage. So,
Exactly. And they have to pay for the amount within those 3 months will be added on to the rest of their mortgages.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about yourself, Doly Begum. So why you interested in politics?
That's a very big question, Usmani Bhai. That's I think, like I mentioned before, healthcare was one of the main reasons why I wanted to make sure that we are able to create positive change in our province. It was something very personal to me. I felt that we benefited from a good healthcare system, which I'm seeing over the past 20 years is actually deteriorating. We should improve, we should get better, not it shouldn't get for the worse. So there's a lot of problems that we're facing, whether it's going to the family doctor and waiting for 4 or 5 hours, or whether you're waiting for a specialist appointment for months, or or a surgery, or whether you're going to the hospital and spending the entire night with a small child. And those are real problems that we're facing, and it's getting worse and worse every single day. So healthcare was one big one that I felt we needed to fix, and we need to have big investment in our hospitals, in our healthcare system, and care in general. That encompasses a lot of other components. So not just hospitals, we have to make sure that they're equipped, our ICUs are well equipped, but we have to also work on whether it's the care for community care. So when people are facing, if an elder needs home care, we have to focus on that as well. Mental health has become a huge problem, and it's getting worse. We're not giving enough focus in the needs of our mental health support for people, and that's become a big problem in the province. We're seeing what's happening right now with the rise, especially if people are staying home during COVID-19. We're seeing a lot of people suffering from that, and that relates to addiction, that relates to people with overdosage, and what we've been fighting for against the current provincial conservative government, because I don't think they understand the gravity of the issue as well. And that's just healthcare. I think the other one I want to point out, which is very dear to me, is in this writing is a lot of children are growing up in poverty. We live in one of the best countries in the world. We live in one of the best provinces in the world. We have the capacity to do better. People deserve better, especially our children. They shouldn't be growing up below the poverty line. They should have a proper breakfast. They should have enough meals, a good roof on top of their head, and that's just a bare minimum. A good education, and there are some of those things that we have to work towards. So those are just two things that I'll mention for now, but there are quite a lot of things that I would love to continue to work on, and the work that we're doing, I hope will improve the situation for people in Scarborough Southwest.
And for early learning and childcare, how do you support the people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so actually this is something that's very very big right now, because as soon as the economy was sort of shut down in a way, or some of the things were closed, we noticed that childcare centers were closed. Mm-hmm. So a lot of working parents use childcare when they go to work. Exactly. And to break it down a little bit further, we have especially women who want to go back to work. after giving birth, they have the ability to go back to work because they are able to put their children into a safe, quality care, which we have in our province, but we don't have enough. So there's a lot of, obviously childcare is one of the most expensive, well, childcare is actually almost the same as a mortgage. A lot of people have compared that to a mortgage or rent because it's so expensive. In Toronto, it's around $1,700 to $2,500 for childcare. That is ridiculous, which means that a lot of women actually decide, or a lot of men or women, one of them, most of the time it's women, I have to admit, they decide to leave jobs and take care of their children. And sometimes for some parents, it's actually not a choice, because for some families, both of them have to work. And for some families, it's not, there aren't two. If a single mother, for example, is having to deal with her, taking care of childcare, lack of childcare, and a job, then that becomes very difficult. So there are a lot of these scenarios where childcare becomes extremely important, and that includes, home daycares as well. We're talking about special programming for children, and the other part is the development of our children. What children learn at a very early age really shapes who they end up being as they're growing up, whether it's high school, the success in their school life, universities, or the jobs they have as they get older. So it's actually a huge part of our economy as well. And we have seen success in other parts of the country, like Quebec, where they have a really good childcare system. So a lot of those components of childcare are essential. And right now, we have reopened the childcare sector, and it looks like a lot of parents, it looks like the premier came up with this plan without really thinking through the issue of social distancing, a lot of things that we need to do during COVID-19, and children, because you can't really tell, a 4, 5, 6-year-old to be social distancing. The important.
I found the news that parents are worried about it.
They're extremely worried. They're very anxious because they're not feeling very comfortable. They're very confident in the plan that the premier and the Minister of Education have come up with. And in my previous discussion, in my conversation with the minister in the past, when I actually brought out some of those concerns, we were told that we're going to come up with a solution. And right now, what we're seeing is that the plan actually lacks a lot of the discussions that we have to have with parents and ECEs. People who are actually on the ground need to be consulted before any government comes up with a plan. So today, my colleague Marit Stiles, who's the critic for education, and I decided to come up with a list, solution-oriented proposal that says, here are things that you have to do, which includes providing support for space, as well as making sure that you're providing support for any additional things like PPE, if ECEs need them, making sure there is stabilization funding for these places, and same thing with school reopening. You have to think about what's going to happen in September, and our classrooms are crammed. If we have 30 kids in a classroom, you cannot tell people to do social distancing and move desks around if they were already crammed in a classroom. So there's a lot of actions that need to be taken immediately, including in schools as well, where if the roof is leaking, we need to fix that right now. If the classrooms are crammed, we need to fix those right now. We cannot expect them to go back in September and miraculously think that everything's moving.
From party, do you do something against the government, or do you tell something to the government like, don't go for opening the school on September, wait until the COVID will be, we see that the number of the cases is going down, but we don't know what's going to happen after 1 month. Maybe it's going to come up again. We don't know about it. So from your party, what is your plan actually? What message do you want to say to the government?
Mm-hmm. So the number one message that we've been following is make sure that we're taking the medical advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario, as well as the national level and municipal levels, because we have a lot of municipalities where they're looking at their numbers specifically. So for example, in Toronto, we're looking at how Toronto is doing compared to other municipalities in Ontario. And then we're focusing on the way Ontario is doing in terms of stopping the spread. So really listening to the guidelines that the chief medical officers have been giving us and how we should reopen, following those steps. That's number one. And then obviously making sure that as we plan to reopen, are we really preparing people as well as the spaces for the reopening? So if we're looking at childcare, the people who are going to be working in the centers, the early childhood educators, for example, are they prepared to do the job? You know, if we're sending workers back to work, are they able to do that job? And right now we're seeing, you know, people who are essential workers, for example, the migrant workers, you know, people who come here to work in our agricultural sector, very important in order to put food on the table. These people, we're asking them to do a job, and yet, are we really protecting them? Not really, because we're seeing some deaths. We're seeing the way they have been contracting the virus. So making sure that the spaces are safe. And that, you know, comes with a lot of actions that need to be taken. That comes with a lot of effort and resources that need to be there. So whether, you know, if you know, 10, 15 people are in the same room crammed, and that's their sleeping space, there is no social isolation happening. These workers are not protected. If there is no financial support to provide PP in our schools, in our childcare spaces, there is no way that these centers can afford to make sure that we have all those equipments, all those things necessary to make the spaces safe and healthy. And it's not really sustainable, because if things go wrong, then we're looking at a second wave. And we don't want that. We don't want to, you know, step forward and then, you know, things go wrong, and really that's a very unsustainable model for reopening. So making sure that you're following the guidelines of chief medical officers, but also making sure that you're really putting the resources and the financial resources necessary, and the strict guidelines too. So if you're giving instructions, make sure that you give proper instructions without any vague sort of outline to each of the sectors.
Okay. So from Scarborough Southwest, we basically know that most of the Bangladeshi community people, especially your voters, they are living in this area in Scarborough Southwest. So what kind of benefits they'll be getting, or they are getting right now from your office?
So we have been, I have a wonderful team that's actually helping me distribute masks throughout the last few months. We have dropped off masks from long-term care homes to shelters, as well as to people's homes. We know that sometimes, you know, one case I had recently where someone was going for a surgery, and when they come back, they needed to, you know, have masks, and it was otherwise they wouldn't be able to go for the surgery. And there's a lot of different pieces of that in terms of how do we make sure that they're safe as they go out, and that they're safe as they come home, and for day-to-day lives. So we needed to have a few more masks for this individual. So we're doing that throughout the last few months. And I got to give a big thank you to my entire team, my office staff for that, who have been doing this on their own time. And sometimes I you know, hear them in the evening running around and dropping some off. And I have been very honored to be able to, I've been very lucky, I would say, to have some incredible donors that I was able to connect with, some really good organizations that have come together to help us get these masks, as well as other PPEs. So different, you know, for example, gowns, face shields, gloves, a lot of those other pieces that were necessary. So we're able to do that for actually, just recently I was at the Scarborough Health Network, where the Muslim Welfare Canada organization dropped off 2,000 gowns. It was incredible. So a lot of those organizations that have come together to support as well. And another thing that we've been doing is checking up with all the, you know, as many people as possible in our riding. So I've been on the phone and making sure that whatever difficulty they're facing right now, because there's a lot of people who are at home, you know, the day-to-day problems didn't really stop during COVID. It just meant that it was added on. COVID was piled on. So if someone was struggling with, you know, with at home with mental health problems, with a surgery they needed, or if they were struggling with benefits and things like that, all those things continued on. So we were having those conversations, and we've been trying to support as well. I've been also working with local tenants,
Yeah.
a lot of people who rent and who are struggling, and some of the folks who felt threatened by big landlords who own multiple buildings in the riding, and a lot of tenants reached out saying that they need help. So we've been working with a lot of tenants as well as small landlords. I think I have to recognize small landlords who have been working really hard, and actually it was really interesting to find how small landlords were the people who were actually kinder to their tenants in terms of understanding the situation and saying, you know what, why don't you give 50% and then we'll figure out what to do after the pandemic ends. And the other piece that we've been working really closely on is making sure that we're supporting local businesses as well. So how are we providing with the support? So pushing the governments with the necessary. So whether it was making sure that people are able to survive throughout the time as they lose their, some people have lost their jobs, or if the businesses have closed down, how are they sustaining themselves? And I'll end with another piece that we have been working really closely with, which has been a lot of workers who have reached out because they were either losing their job or they were feeling really unsafe because they were essential workers who had to go to work, but they were not feeling safe at work. So we were actually making sure that the City of Toronto and the Province of Ontario were doing the inspections necessary to find out whether the workplaces are safe. And we have quite a few workplaces in the riding or just bordering on the riding of the riding where people were working, and it's mainly a lot of actually there are some Bangladeshi community women as well, South Asian women who work in these places that sometimes are afraid to speak out, but we're fearing for workplace safety. So we were making sure that we advocate for them as well and stand up for what they need. So a lot of things have been happening. I could continue on with the amount of issues that we're facing in the riding, and obviously there's a lot more work going on as we now slowly reopen, and people are now finding more concerns and trying to get back to normal and how that's going to look like. So I'll just stop there for now.
So what about the international students? Because they are affected more by this pandemic. So how do your party and you support them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I'm so glad you reminded me of two things. One was from the beginning of the pandemic, something that I've been advocating for is how do we support international students, and a lot of international students who I've spoken with, and some of the local community leaders who have actually messaged me to ask for support as well. So, whether just making sure that they have enough support available, because sometimes a lot of them weren't receiving the financial support that they usually get from their parents. So there was a lot of concerns about that as well. I was really hoping that the federal government would provide some support. And when they announced the help for students, we were trying to see what would be available. Unfortunately, there was nothing given from the different levels of government. I think I was grateful that a lot of community members, a lot of community support was given to help international students get through this time. And we were able to, and I was volunteering with organizations that were already doing great work to provide food, groceries, and just any sort of help that was necessary to help people. I think this pandemic has taught us that during these times there are groups of people that are more vulnerable than others, and international students was another one. And it really brought out the issue in terms of how do we, during these situations, how do we really help them? And while we're on international students, actually on that topic, I just remembered another topic was foreign credential recognition, something that I've been working with a lot of community members, community leaders who have been advocating for a long time now. And during the beginning of this pandemic, we were able to have the government finally agree to take in some of the, some of the medical professionals who were who were experts in their own countries, especially, for example, Bangladeshi Canadians who have been doing a great job back home, and they came here with this degree, with this professional expertise, with that skill, but were not recognized here. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of that recognition piece, because in a way they were sort of taken advantage of during this situation, but not given the full recognition that's necessary. So that's another piece that we're working on, and there's a lot of skills that these people, especially from our immigrant communities, that can offer.
Exactly. So last but not the least, what message do you want to deliver to our Bangladeshi community in Scarborough Southwest?
Well, I would ask that now that it's been 2 years, I ask for you to stay connected, for your love and support as you have given me. For the past 2 years, you've taken me in like family, and I could not ask for more. I'm so honored. I am so grateful to Allah for everything that I'm able to do in this community. I think that to be able to stand up in the legislature and speak out for this community, it's really something that the community has done together, and I'm really blessed to have this opportunity. I would ask that continue to stay connected. And if you need any support, any help, please get in touch. We do have over 110,000 people in the riding. So sometimes if I don't get a hold of you, if I'm not able to reach out to you, it's because we have so many people who are struggling in the community, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. We found out that there's a lot more people that need help. Sometimes those stories are a little bit hidden. Sometimes a lot of those people don't come out, but during this time we found out how vulnerable they are. And we want to do everything possible to help these people, and that's why I'm grateful to be able to advocate for them, to help them. And if anyone needs any support, please do not hesitate to reach out. We want to do everything possible to help the local people in Scarborough Southwest.
That's great. Thank you very much, Doly Begum, for your valuable time with CBN. And thank you again for joining with us.
Thank you so much, Usmani Bhai, for having me. And best wishes to CBN as always.
Thank you. Stay safe. Dear audience, thank you very much for joining with us. Our today's guest was Doly Begum, Member of Provincial Parliament, Scarborough Southwest. So she delivered her speeches, and you knew a lot of things about Bangladeshi community, and at the same time what happening in Toronto and in Canada. So thank you very much for watching. And next episode, there will be another special guest in my show. So till then, stay with me, stay with CBN, and stay safe. Thank you very much.